Hi, my name is Willie, and on this video, I'm going to be giving a shout out to Can't Kill Me. He was having some questions about how these springs go in, so I thought I'd go over how the governor works. Not going to hurt this engine any worse than it already is. So I thought this would be a good demo version. It's kind of sad because this is a 12 horse. Oh well. I'll probably rebuild this someday. Anyway, this is our central fuel governor. As the crank spins the timing gear, which spins the cam gear, spins the governor gear. Nice thing is they're cut at an angle, so they tend to last a long time. You usually don't see a lot of problems with these. Thought it'd be a good idea to open this motor up because I want to get some lubricant in here so this doesn't rust, because there's already a little bit of rust starting to form in here from sitting for who knows how long. Even the cylinder's in nice shape. I don't think this engine had a lot of hours on it, and the cam's actually pretty clean. No scoring anywhere, so it's a good rebuild candidate. So what happens as the governor spins up, these fingers get pushed out, and as RPMs go down, there's less force in these fingers, and the RPM goes down, and they squish in. Not too complicated, and this is the governor arm right here. Goes back and forth. So the spring wants to add tension this direction. See, that's spring tension right there. And the governor wants to return it to an idle. So that's side idle, and that would be full speed. So when you're adjusting these, you have the nut right here. You want to hold that at full throttle. You loosen that jam nut, which usually the springs will hold at full throttle. And you would turn the opposite direction of the spring till it bottoms out on that tab. So the spring, you go to the same, you almost turn it the same direction as what the spring is pulling it. If you have it backwards, in fact, I'm going to loosen up that nut and turn it around backwards, and I'll show you what happens when you have it backwards. Hang on. I know that took a really long time. If you have it backwards, it won't move, because the governor is bottomed out here, and the throttle is bottomed out there. So if you mess it up, it won't move at all. So I just thought I'd go over that. So I'm going to see if I can't do this all with one hand. Going to loosen that up. Same direction the spring is pulling the throttle, wide open. We'll make sure the throttle is wide open, there's spring tension on it. And you turn it the same direction. See, the springs are pulling it this way. Turn it that way. And that'll push those little tabs in. See? That direction. Not that way, that way. Then we can tighten up this nut. So spring tension full throttle, spin the loosen the nut, spin the shaft the same direction. You should have play both directions. So as I was saying, the spring goes one way, and the spring is going to push it this direction, and the RPMs is going to want to push it the other direction. So the RPMs will want to return to idle, and the spring wants to turn to full throttle. Eventually they reach a equilibrium. Now onto these springs. How this works is there's one spring in the back here. Actually, let me clean that up a little bit because I don't think you can see very well. Hang on. Not really. I'm not going anywhere. Hang on. I think you can see it better now. Anyway, this is in a slide. This would be the main RPM spring, and this would be the idle speed spring. So this will be turned down all the way. The closer it is to the focal point, the less RPMs you're going to get out of it. So being all the way out here, you're going to have more torque on the governor to add more RPM. This will be the linkage going down to the carburetor. Sometimes these linkages can get loose. Sometimes you can add a spring on the governor arm or inside the hole of the linkage, as well as on the other side of the carburetor. You gotta link it up to the governor arm and the throttle plate, and then the governor rod will sit in between the two, and you can take that slap out of it in case you have some hunting because of a lot of play in here. I don't really have an engine that's easy to get at right now to show you, unfortunately. That, and it's getting dark outside, but yeah, some engines will have springs in between the carburetor butterfly valve and the governor arm to take up the slop. So there's nuts on the top of this rod to adjust the idle speed, which would be all the way down. I know it's upside down right now, so it's up, but I'll flip it over in a little bit. These nuts will adjust the idle. So you want, if you're idle, the idea of having the idle speed here is it gives it, not necessarily to give it throttle when you start it, but if you're in a tractor and you have it down at idle and you want to let off the clutch, there's still some governor tension to keep the engine running so it doesn't stall. That's the idea of the idle speed screw. So if you want to get a little more sensitive idle, you can put the screw over here and then readjust the nut to adjust your RPM down here. That'll give you more responsive idle and also give you a little more tension on the outside focal point of the governor arm to increase your RPMs as well. Eventually, when you open this throttle up so far, that spring is in a slot there. Eventually that main governor spring is going to start to get tension on it. Now because it's at full throttle right now, there's no tension on it. Now if I close it down to idle, then it just barely sits on that spring. There's no tension on the main spring, but it's ready to go. As soon as you give it any kind of RPM, that main spring will be under tension. Which I'm trying to do two things at one time. See now, if I move this rod from idle, it'll get some tension on it. Now if you put that spring in backwards, if I can get a hold of it, if this spring is in backwards, it'll bind up on that governor lever, so you want to make sure that's in correctly. And that's just simple hook in. If you put this in backwards, the spring coil will bind up with this other spring coil, so that's why the long end goes on this end. So that's the only direction they go in where they won't bind up with each other. And this spring can go all the way out here without a problem. So let me get this back together and I'll show you with some better detail on the governor springs. So hang on. I get to lift this heavy beast. I want to clean those out, so it'll be a few minutes. For me, at least. Ta-da! That look a little bit better? See if I can get that in the shot. So we only got tension on this one spring right now, and that's just the idle. So it's just barely enough to hold the throttle open for idle. I have found sometimes in cold starts it's a little bit easier to start these if you hold it at idle and crank it over. So not always the best thing for starting the engine, having it full throttle in some cases. That's how it would have been from the factory. As you can see, that spring has no tension on it down here. See, no tension on it. Till down at idle. Just barely starts to get tension on it at idle. And whenever, as you increase RPM, you'll get tension on it. That would increase your RPM. And for those of you who want to know how to adjust the governor, here we go again. Spring's holding it clockwise, all the way at full throttle. I'm going to turn that flathead clockwise. See? That way. Wrong way? Right way. Counterclockwise. While it's at full throttle. And I only have one hand, but usually while you have a screwdriver on there, then you can tighten up your nut. Which I'm going to be careful not to move anything. Oh, and I'm loosening it. Da-da-da-da. Very careful not to move that shaft. Just like that. So, if you like the video, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Have a good day. Bye.